the wacky world of MultimediaJay.
This has got to be the dumbest thing that I have ever done to try and save power, and thus save energy and lower costs around here. Now, we know that Tuxedo has a bit of a problem with sucking too much power right now. I think it might be because the power supply is too big. So while I'm doing some experimenting with figuring out whether I should drop down to a lower wattage power supply in order to get back into the power curve, like the 20 to 50% ratings these 80 pluses are usually known for in terms of their efficiency, we'll go over that some other time, I decided to look at some other places in terms of where I can save money, and stumbled upon something that's just, it's so stupid, both from a technical standpoint and from an audio-visual standpoint, but here we are. There's the kilowatt hooked up this time to my Samsung TV that I've been using as a monitor since 2008. Great TV, really good monitor. A couple of quirks here and there with a couple of picture modes that aren't supported that'll pop you to an error message when you go to play certain games, and the splash screens have weird resolutions. But this thing has been chugging along since, I believe, November of 2008. I actually first got this thing when Wrath of the Lich King came out in World of Warcraft, and I was playing Wrath of the Lich King on a big screen. So it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun, actually, although there are some drawbacks. Sometimes I'm looking at one part of the screen. Howdy, folks. I'm looking at one part of the screen, and I lose track of where my mouse is, and I have to start shaking the mouse around. Where's my mouse? Not good in a point-and-click MMO. Right now it's turned off and not drawing any power, so let's turn it back on. Let's wiggle the mouse a little, too, because, well, this should be very interesting. So the biggest problem with this TV is just how old it is. It's an old cold cathode backlit LCD, aka a real LCD. Newer TVs do LED backlighting or just flat out LED displays with no LCDs. So what might be called an LCD today is not the same as this thing. And here's why these cathode things have fallen by the wayside. So right now this thing's sucking nearly 100 watts, and that's with the backlight turned all the way down. That is bad. I mean, I've seen some newer Samsungs that are Energy Star certified that only suck 53 watts full blast for a TV this size. Ah, man, so annoying. But anyways, so let me actually show you what I'm talking about with the settings on this and just why this backlight thing matters. So I think I've already done a video about this years ago, but so here's a backlight of 0. If we crank the backlight all the way up to 10, suddenly our wattage goes up to almost 200 watts, which is still better than the tube monitor this thing replaced, but unfortunately it's terrible compared to the newer TVs. So let's put the backlight all the way down and get back down to the 100 watt mark. Now here's something interesting. So if you'll notice, if I open my source menu here, I've turned my PC source back on, which means I'm using the VGA port again. And this is where the audio-visual folks are going to be flipping their lids. How on earth could you go from HDMI back to VGA? How could you go from a digital clean signal to a noisy analog signal? Easy, just change the source. Actually, I currently have this... Actually, this thing does 1080p over VGA, and ironically, it does a very, very good job, even though it's VGA and it's analog. I've seen cheaper TVs put out terrible VGA signal versus HDMI, so there is a difference in the clarity from analog to digital. The HDMI picture is better, but you really have to look hard. You have to really look hard, almost at the look for edges on all the pixels. This isn't going to show up on the camera in a million years, but you really need to look hard at the edges of the pixels in order to actually spot the fuzziness introduced by the analog signal. This Samsung is really, really good. It's really good at handling old analog signals, which is why I went for a couple of years before I finally got the HDMI working. When I first tried using the HDMI, there was color bleed everywhere, because and I hate it. I'm like, wow, this is a step down in picture quality. I'll stick with VGA. Until I found out that when you're putting computer signals through an HDMI, you want, because of the smaller lines and pixels involved versus, say, a television or an actual film picture or something, you want to turn down the sharpness nearly all the way in order to have it look like the old VGA signal, then turn it up a bit to look crisper. but usually by default there's way too much contrast or way too much of sharpness, and you get color bleed all over the place. Alright, so we're sitting pretty at 95 watts. Now, here's the reason why I decided to hook this back up. So we're on HDMI right now. Now, here's the reason why I'm doing this. I'm cloning to both the VGA and the HDMI. Okay, there goes the screen going to sleep, right? Let's close the source menu. See? There's no signal. See? There's no signal. Now, with the one problem that this TV has, maybe it's because of how old it is, I don't know if there's even a firmware update that'll fix this. When a computer going through the HDMI ports goes to sleep, like what just happened here, the monitor doesn't go to sleep too. It doesn't shut off. And so this 100-watt monitor is still sucking 70-something watts, even when there's no signal going to it. So let's turn the screen back on. I've actually modified the settings. I've modified the sleep settings to go to sleep after a minute. So, HDMI, we know that happens, and it only goes down to 77 watts from around the 100-watt mark. Let's go back to VGA, take a slight hit in picture quality because it is analog signal. Things are a little fuzzier, and I don't know if I could get any cables that would fix this fuzziness because we are still talking analog versus digital. Although this Samsung is very, very good with analog signal. I have seen some TVs where the VGA was more like a tacked-on feature, but I mean, you run the auto adjustment every so often. Oh, this will be a blast from the past for some people. You run the auto adjustment every so often, get the settings just right, and you'd be surprised what kind of picture quality you can get over VGA on this darn thing. Even though it's VGA and it's analog. Now, if I look very closely at like this tree over here, I can see fuzziness around the branches. You're not going to see it through the camera, not in a million years, but I can see the difference. Same thing with web pages too. Pixels have actual edges with a digital HDMI signal, whereas they fuzz a bit with analog VGA. So let's just shoot the breeze a bit and wait for the screen to for the computer to go to sleep again, and see the classic firmware oversight that exists in this television. I guess the folks at Samsung back in 2008 didn't think someone would buy a 37-inch TV to use as a computer monitor. And so, it creates the rather bizarre situation. So here we are. Interesting, we actually lost a watt by going back to analog for whatever reason. The backlight settings are the same, but we're just shy of 100 watts. This is still way too many watts. There are newer TVs that don't suck anywhere near this much power. Like, I remember reading about the 53-watt Samsung. I was like, dude, I should get a new TV. It's really too bad, because this TV costs like $800. I had to get it back in the day. I had to give up a tax refund in order to move up to this TV. It's just too bad. It's just terrible. Oh, there it goes. And this time, here at Searching for Signals, instead of sitting there like a moron saying no signal, if this oop, there it goes. The TV actually goes into standby mode, and as soon as the kilowatt stops dropping, now we're down to only 18 watts, which is still a standby power draw that's more than some of the light bulbs around here. So it is still worth it to turn the TV off when it's not in use, rather than let it sit around in standby mode. But 70-something watts versus less than 20 watts, that is what I'm doing. That is what I intend on doing with the VGA. And to bring the signal back, all I gotta do is just bump the mouse a little. There it is. So here's my plan until I can get a more power-efficient TV, or perhaps one with better firmware, where the screen will actually go into standby mode over the HDMIs. I don't know what the story is with that, but so here's my plan. What I'm going to do is, when I'm watching movies and I'm playing games for long hours at a time and I want the better picture quality, set the source to HDMI. But when I'm just playing around on Facebook, or sometimes I'm at the computer and sometimes I don't, sometimes I'm not, and it's not, picture quality's not important, I'm basically going to use the VGA port with as power save mode on this old TV, because unlike the HDMIs, this TV will actually go into standby mode when there's no signal over the VGA. Stupid, I know. It's really stupid. It breaks a lot of the rules of being an AV geek, but it's a way to save power in some small amount at the very least. Why? It's really too bad. I got caught up in the whole PC performance thing for all those years. Why couldn't I have looked at things like bang for buck? Especially when I've never been interested in paying for the premium prices associated with computer parts to get the best performance. I've always bought like the second or third best stuff. I'm thinking maybe I should look for more bang for buck parts. I was actually looking to see if there was a way to put a graphics card up, pair a graphics card up with an Intel Atom. And I guess there's no motherboards for it. It's all mini ITX with everything built in, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a power-efficient processor like the Atom? Because of all the rumors I'm hearing about, you don't need a powerful CPU to game anymore, it's all the graphics card these days. Oh well, what are you gonna do? So yeah, that is probably the dumbest thing that I have ever done to save power, ever. But it works. And until I get a new power-efficient TV, more power-efficient TV, whenever that is, yeah. So the computer has 2 power modes. Well, why don't we just turn this thing back on and just click around. Ding, ding, ding. Howdy, folks. Come on, screen. Wake up, screen. Anyways, so computers usually have at least 2 power modes, balance mode and power saver mode. And it looks like I'm going to have to treat this monitor like it has 2 power modes too, via the source button. So regular mode will be HDMI with the superior picture quality of the digital signal, and then power save mode will be the VGA port. I don't know if there is a firmware update for this TV that fixes this. Given how old it is, I'm not very positive that there ever was one. But what a stupid way to save power. Oh man. I should just Craigslist this TV or something along those lines, but it's only a 60 hertz. Nowadays you got people buying 120 hertz TVs and stuff like that, but I don't need any more than a 60 hertz because I often don't get more than 60 frames a second in most games. So the television reasons for moving up to a 120 hertz TV, not so applicable when I'm mostly using this thing as a monitor. How did I back myself into this corner? Oh well. How's that for a simpler video? Hopefully I can do some stuff with the Delosaurus this weekend. It's a little too late to be doing any of that stuff tonight, but the weekend's here, and I'm already relaxed from having 2 extra days off, so we'll see what we can do here. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.